A roller skating endurance world record. So who does that? Well, my grandfather in 1932 holds the world record at 79.5 hours non-stop. Not one break. And that is what the rest of the world was chasing for all these years, trying to achieve that and have not broken it. So we'll go through the story of how I attempted my own grandfather's world record and how I broke the official world record at 65 hours and having done at 70 hours and 6 minutes. But still, my grandfather Leon Grobler's record still stands. No one has come near it. That's the challenge. The world record was held by my grandfather, and it was always something with pride that as a child I would be speaking to my grandfather and having a look at his trophy and admiring his trophy, and then he would tell the story. When he was 17 years old at the Rialto rink in Bloemfontein, they decided just to get together and really attempt this world record. What took place in those times, we're talking now 1932, is they used to get together. They would have a full-on band in the rink, and people would just roller skate around and just enjoy it, just have fun, almost sort of what we have in the modern day, sort of a roller disco kind of a thing. Anyway, and they decided to go for the world record. Well, the result is that a couple of his mates had been training for it, and they then went for the record. Now, in those days, it was really, the equipment was quite minuscule. It was, they called it Dexter roller skates. And some of the roller skates even, you would just clip onto your current shoe, the shoe that you walk with. So technology was really, not as advanced as it is today, naturally. And even some of the roller skates, the wheels weren't even rubber. They were of aluminium. So really that's where it all took place. And he then just carried on, and they found that the others were dropping out. Obviously we're talking about serious time, because I did it as well, and I know what it feels like. And then at 79.5 hours he collapsed. And they had it in the newspapers all over, and then he got his trophy as having the world record. And then what happened from there is one of the officials then failed to send it off to the World Roller Skating Federation in the United States. But this was not important at that time, because the celebration was there. He was 17 years old. Those days they never had the technology that we have, that instant media transfer and information transfer. So naturally he accepted that that would be the world record set. Years later we found that actually his world record was not sent through and not officiated. So then a chap from Cape Town, Peter Murphy, whom I discussed with when he was in retirement about going for the record, because we found out that he had the official world record that he had sent through and officiated at 65 hours. So here I was with him discussing going for that world record, but actually my grandfather's world record, because I thought, let's do justice to Leon Grobler at 17 years old. He was none the wiser. He has the world record still to this day. But we'll continue with the story. My incentive for attempting this world record is not only as a child. As I said, I was absolutely, enthralled by this world record, and I would always call my grandfather, instead of grandpa, I'd call him the world champion. So it stuck with us. It kind of worked. We enjoyed that little banter. And then when I went to the military, I got a call when I was in the military and away out of South Africa. I got a call to say that, or a message rather, to say that my grandfather had passed away. So when I got back to South Africa, I was then given, my grandmother gave me his trophy as an sort of an inheritance token, if you'd like, because she knew how important it was to me. So that was really where it was. And especially when I did some investigation into how this whole thing panned out, that at 17 years old, the officials at that time never officiated the record. I felt sort of an injustice, and I felt I needed to do right. And if it wasn't him, it would be me that I would attempt the world record. And that's really the great incentive. I was young, and I was very much involved in the gym industry, and so I was fit, and but I didn't realize how fit I needed to get. So that was really the incentive, in a nutshell, why I attempted it. The biggest obstacle was, for me, first of all, having not been on roller skates. I had to get comfortable on roller skates. I had to spend hundreds of hours, and I really mean hundreds of hours. I remember one December I was training, and I had done over 2,000 kilometers on skates. So the whole idea was that we were training, that's apart from all my other training, was training on skates. Time on skates, as we would call it. And I had the key for the Standard Bank Arena in Durban, and I would arrive there at 1 o'clock in the morning. I would, at 2 o'clock, I would start roller skating, and I would just spend time on skates, comfortable, getting myself comfortable, blister after blister. Okay, what do we do now? We're getting blisters at 5 hours, I mean, the world record is 79.5 hours. So, where do we go from here? Interesting things, my body changed. My mind, I had to also train my mind to be as fit as my body, and my body as fit as my mind. That's why a lot of you see sportsmen collapse because their mind is stronger than their bodies, or their bodies are stronger than their minds, and then just can't get to the top hill. Anyway, so that was one of the challenges. The other thing, of course, we're talking about day and night, staying awake. Staying awake was a massive, massive thing. And even at 24 hours, I remember training and trying to push through to 48 hours. And I'd get this almost sort of very dizzy, hazy feeling, and extremely dizzy, and with a bit of hallucination. So there was that. And then, of course, choosing the right roller skates. I must have gone through about 10 pairs just to find the right roller skate for that particular event. And of course, gear. The other thing also is that when you are busy, this is an endurance event, so it's a non-stop endurance event. So what the result is that, even from a biological break, you can't do that. You've got to go behind a curtain and just do that in a bottle, for instance. So I had to change my diet as well. I had to understand, and you would not believe that purity, the baby food purity, was the best form of food for that particular event. My mentor, Professor Tim Noakes, has specialized, worldwide, has been known with his sports analysis. And he told me, he said, you're going to go through stages where you will want to give up. But what you need to do is, you need to go and dig deep in the attic. I didn't really know what he was talking about at that time, but I've adopted that all my life, even climbing mountains now. That when you feel you can't anymore, you go and you dig in your mind, you dig in the attic, and even that smallest matchbox has got a little surprise for you. So I said to him, but what do you mean by that? And he said, well, what you do is, like the Comrades marathon runners, and when he wrote the book, The Law of Running, and he was also talking about at that time about the 100 milers, that what you do is you reward yourself. You say to yourself, okay, I'm going to do 2 hours on skates, and then I'm going to reward myself with a piece of chocolate. It's amazing how the mind works. Even the smallest little incentive or some warm hot chocolate, or a hot towel around your shoulders. You take your shirt off and you have that warmth, a warm blanket, all those kind of incentives. But what you do is you don't create it monotonously every 2 hours. You'll take it 2 hours, then 5 hours, then 6 hours, and so forth. So what we really did was we had a clock at the arena, and as the 2 hours went, that clock then signified the little incentive that I had, and it was always a surprise, which was great. Other times it was the Walkman. We never had fancy things those days, so a Walkman with my favorite music, that kind of thing, which was great. And other people roller skated with me as well, just to talk me through it, my biokineticist, my sports psychologist, and so forth. So it was great. When it came to training, we had to divide things up into endurance. We had to divide it up into speed. We had to also divide it up in terms of flexibility, and then also gym training. And what I had to do is I had to strengthen my muscles. I had to also do repetitive training in terms of high reps, low weights, high repetitions. A lot of it was a type of calisthenics that I had to do to stretch. Now, I'm not really a supple person, so I had to train for that. Massages worked very well, sports massages, and I had to then undergo also a lot of training on skates, on wheels. That was the most important thing. I would spend weekends that I would just be on skates, and people would just bring me food, bring me breakfast, bring me a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, and so forth. And nearing the time, I would then move on to the sponsored foods that I had to ensure was one of them, that I had to start taking. So I had to fine-tune from having a pizza while I'm skating in the sun on the beachfront, for instance. I had to then start focusing towards what specifically am I eating. And then I also had a pulse monitor that was also sponsored to monitor my heart rate. Those were very important things that I had never considered before. When I woke up in the morning and my heart rate was a little bit higher, it meant I needed to have a restful day. So I had to listen to that. So I was really going into the scientific side of things with my biokineticist and with Professor Tim Nuggs to understand how the human body works, what it likes, what it doesn't like. And if you kick against it, you're going to have trouble. I remember at one stage I was training so hard that I was super fit, but I was training so hard that I actually could feel that I was getting that fluey feeling. And then I was in a total panic, because what do I do now? At that level of intensity of training, you don't want to stop training. You're just so in the mood to get things going, and you don't want to miss out on an hour, because in my mind, an hour that I'm not training, somebody else is training to beat me. So you become quite possessive of your time and your health. Anybody coughs near you, you actually become antisocial, because you're really just focusing at that. And I think that was good for me at the time. I needed that. I needed that fine focus, because this was a hell of an attempt that I was going for, and I only started realizing it when I got to that level of super fitness and that level of intense training, where I had to actually stop working because I didn't have enough time to work and train. So it consumed my entire time. Yes, the mental and physical endurance was quite amazing, because what my biokineticist would do, and that was one of the things that Professor Tim Nuggs was very interested in. He said, I can't help you with an event as long as this, but I can advise you of what I'm doing with the comrades, marathon runners and the 100-milers. He said, but what I'm particularly interested in is the psychological aspects that you're going to be going through. So what we'd be doing is that as we were training, and even during the event, I would have my biokineticist, Paul Hawkins, that would throw me a tennis ball. And he would just throw the tennis ball as I'm roller skating past and test my coordination. And then he had asked me to hold a tennis ball and throw it up and down while I'm roller skating, and then I had to catch it in the left hand and throw it and catch it in the right hand. Not that easy, but you know, when you're busy training, you get used to, you know, that kind of skating, and then also bouncing it on the ground and then throwing it back to him. I'll remember that always. I'll never forget Paul's face throwing the tennis ball to me and then, you know, waiting to catch it again, and then giving me the thumbs up saying that we're all good. What we also found is that the longer, you must know that the longer you roller skating or any endurance event without sleep, your body takes strain. And yes, there are times where you got to dig extremely deep. There were times, to answer your question previously, that I felt this was bigger than what I could handle. I also had a sports psychologist, Brigadier Alberts, and he was helping me. He helped a couple of the professional cricket players and professional sportsmen. Very interesting thing what he would do is he would analyze your dream behavior. Now that was for me very strange, but there's certain, when your body is at rest and your body is ready, truly ready for an event, and you've reached the peak of your training and your mental preparation, the analysis of the dreams was actually of importance, which I found, you know, in the beginning when I heard it, I thought it's ridiculous, but it works. And so that's from a mental perspective. What was also very important is that I started listening to music with a particular beat as I was roller skating. The same, well, one would call it a monotonous beat, but the same type of music. And that's where I spoke to the aerobic instructors. They were very good with that kind of beats, and a couple of DJs. And so they would, together, they would give me the right music so that I could keep the same rhythm, which helped my body much better. You can imagine the stop start all the time, you know, blistering and what have you. Speaking of blistering, we found that under the socks, the first line of defense that you would put on your feet that worked is good old ladies' stockings. So what I do is barefoot, put the stockings on, then put the sock over, and I found that between the skin and the stocking, it wasn't creating blisters. The stocking was rubbing, instead of my skin rubbing against the sock, the stocking was rubbing against the sock. So it's all those things that we had to learn as we went by. What I'd like this video to achieve is, first of all, I was very proud of what I had accomplished. I went through the Lions Club, Gillett's, Emberton, and they officiated the record. But I found that over the years, I still felt that I have not had the record at me breaking Peter Murphy's record, 65 hours, and my record stands at 70 hours and 6 minutes. But you know, every sportsman goes through this, I'm sure, that you need to recognize who actually is the first. And I, especially my grandfather, that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted justice about that. And this is why I'd like to put this video out there. It's not about me. What I've said today is to explain how difficult this whole process was. But in the end, I would personally, my wish is that the World Federation, Roller Skating Federation, recognizes Mr. Leon Krobler at 17 years old, breaking the world record at that time and still holding it at 79.5 hours. It has not been achieved since, and it's still been standing since 1932. I think he deserves it, and I know he deserves it, and that's what I'd like out of this.
Awesome. Awesome. That was nice. That was really, really cool.
Because we had never spoken what my time was. That's why I added it in now.
Oh yes, that is true. I wanted to actually, as like we were in the middle of the question.
Yes, in conclusion, what I'd like to say is that all the people that did attempt the record, Peter Murphy, Leon Krobler, and his mates in 1932, we want to honor them. We want to honor them in this video. They did extremely well. Going for a world record is something great, and it's something exciting. And I'd like to recognize every single one of them, more so than myself. But I'd like, in conclusion, Mr. Leon Krobler, my grandfather, at 17 years old, I'd like his world record to be recognized. And if it's not recognized in the books, to be recognized by fellow roller skaters out there. I think it's the right thing to do.